All right, Joel, lots to cover, including some great stuff coming up this week. Let's go back a couple of weeks. Tiger Woods, last time we talked, was getting ready to play at Torrey Pines. He did make the cut barely, 72, 71, 70, and 72. Let's talk first of all about health. He appeared to be pain-free during those rounds at Torrey Pines.
He did, and that was definitely the biggest thing, I think, and the biggest takeaway from the week. 4 rounds under his belt. Never once did I see him wince or look extra ginger, after taking a lash into the deep rough, or, fall down to a knee and hold his back, or things like we've seen over the recent past. He looked extremely healthy, and like I mentioned a second ago, being able to go at a ball in deep rough, especially at Torrey where you have a lot of uneven lies, you have the ball below your feet, ball above your feet. So, there's a lot of just a lot of different undulations you have to deal with, and you have to have confidence in your game and in your body and in your strength that you can make those moves at the ball. And we have not seen that from Tiger for years, but we definitely saw it a couple weeks ago. And also off the tee too is another thing. He really went at a couple of tee shots with the driver, and they didn't necessarily find the fairway, but he certainly looked healthy while doing it. So it's a positive sign for those Tiger fans.
Yeah, that was my next point. And you mentioned playing out of the rough, and he got plenty of opportunities to do that. Not only did he have some misses off the tee, Joel, he had some bad misses off the tee.
Yeah, and it was a two-way miss, so it was going in both directions. He'd set up left to try and hit a high butter fade down the middle, and he'd either hit a giant block way right of the fairway, or he'd set up left and it would go further left, or he'd set up right to try and hit a draw, and he'd either overcook it or leave it way out to the right. Yeah, he was at some holes. I mean, he was 30 or even 40 yards offline, which it's hard at any golf course to play from deep rough and that far offline, but especially Torrey Pines. Those greens are so firm, and if you're playing from deep rough the entire week, I mean, you're just not going to be able to hold shots. And I don't care how strong you are, how far you hit it, you're just not going to be able to stick your approaches like you can if you're in the fairway. So he paid the price for that for sure.
So while he struggled at times off the tee, his short game at times actually looked pretty good.
That was his savior. You mentioned his scores just a second ago. He never shot over par for the week, which is phenomenal. Yeah. It's a difficult golf course. No question about it. You shoot anything under par, you move up the leaderboard during a given day. His putter looked great. He made a lot of really good par saves, and I think the biggest thing, other than the health, like we mentioned, but the biggest thing was his chipping. It was outstanding. He hit so many good chip shots. It almost pains me to say he looked like he did 10 years ago, where he could open up for a flop shot from the deep rough. He could bump and run it into a bank out of the sand, out of tight lies, out of thick lies. Looked really, really good. And that's what we saw, from Tiger through his heyday. But the last few years was a different story, where he almost had the chipping yips there for a while. Think back to a couple years ago at the Hero World Challenge. I mean, he was standing over a chip, and I was almost visibly nervous for him because you could just tell he didn't know how to play it. He didn't know what to expect. Clearly, he spent a lot of time with it, and it really paid off. Because without that, as bad as he was driving the ball, without good chipping at Torrey, he would not have made the weekend, no question.
And his demeanor seems to be a little different. I don't know if it's maturity or it's perspective or whatever word you want to use, but it appears that occasionally he's actually allowing himself to actually enjoy the process, which is something we certainly never saw back in the heyday.
Yeah, back in the heyday, it was nose to the grindstone. I'm here to win.
Yeah.
Basically, just get out of my way. It's me and the golf course, and I'm just going to run everybody over. No, I agree. He was a little talkative. He actually was signing autographs after rounds. Not saying he never did that before, but he definitely seemed to be a little more open with the media. I don't know. It seems, I'm not sure it'll always be like that, but for Tiger's sake and for golf's sake, it's definitely a good thing because he's going to win a lot of fans back, and just to allow himself to open up even a little bit is going to be a dramatic change from the way things were before.
And we mentioned we'll see Tiger again a few times before a return to the Masters.
Yeah, we'll see him next week at Riviera. Tournament he's actually never won, but it's kind of right in his backyard, growing up right near there in Cyprus. and then we'll see him 2 more times. We'll see him at Bay Hill. Well, actually, we could see him more if he were to dramatically do something and somehow qualify for a WGC event, but that seems unlikely. I skipped the Honda. We'll see him at Honda and then Bay Hill, and then we'll see him at the Masters in early April. So, yeah, we're going to see him a little more, but I would expect at most for the season he'll play 15, maybe 16 events. I don't think he's going to overdo it, which is the right thing for him versus, the last couple of years where he tried to collect an appearance fees overseas or kind of basically just overschedule things like he used to do. He's definitely taking it the smart route this time.
So let's talk about last weekend in Phoenix at the Phoenix Open. Always that raucous football-type atmosphere at the Waste Management Open. 719,000 people in the gallery for this tournament, including 216,000 people on Saturday. That number is mind-boggling when you think about that many people physically showing up for a golf tournament in one day.
It's crazy. I mean, sure, you're spread out over a couple hundred acres and things like that, but it's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was there years ago, and it was crazy. I was there, I think, in 2009. It was crazy event, and it's got even crazier. What they've done to the 16th hole, I mean, it's basically just an enclosed stadium where players have to enter in through the tunnel, and you have 20 to 25,000 people on one hole, and then everybody else kind of circulating around there, and then of course the rest of the course. But it's the world's biggest outdoor cocktail party that also happens to have a golf tournament going on in the background. It's a little overboard nowadays, but at the same time I love it because it brings people into the game and it creates extra attention for golf that it would not get otherwise. So, and it draws a pretty good field each year, and this year we had a great finish. So, I mean, on top of that, all in all, it was a really positive week for the game.
Yeah, 73rd hole this year, and a couple of Kansas guys going at it in a playoff.
Yeah, Gary Woodland ultimately coming out on top over Ches Reavie on the first playoff hole. Gary made par. Emotional win for Gary. He had lost one of his wife was pregnant with twins last year, and they lost one of the twins early in the pregnancy, and thankfully the other one's healthy and doing great. When he won, you could tell it was extremely emotional. He pointed to the sky, and it was great to see him win. He went through some tough times last year, but his game had been rounding into form, and not surprised to see him break through. He's got tremendous talent, and even though Phil gave it a run on Sunday and ultimately came up short, made that double bogey in the last hole, which really he didn't necessarily have a chance to win. He would have had to hold his second shot, but yeah, Phil was right there. Kuchar had a good chance. Ricky early in the day until he kind of melted down the stretch, and same as John Rahm. So it was a packed leaderboard early, and it kind of dwindled late. But it was good to see Gary get the win.
Yeah, I mentioned that charge by Phil on those same holes where he was going birdie on 15, 16, 17. That's where the wheels were falling off for Ricky, who had led after 54 holes. He bogeys 15, 16, 17, goes from the 54-hole lead to finishing T11.
Yeah, and Ricky, even going into 15, was almost out of it at that point. He would have needed to do something crazy, and then he gets to 15, which is a reachable par 5, which Ricky has never played well in that hole for some weird reason. He was runner-up 2 years ago in the Phoenix Open, and he was T4th last year. So he's been in contention now the last 3 years, and 15, for whatever reason, he hasn't played great. He gets up to the tee, and he pulled it right in the water off the tee, and at that point, that was pretty much it. He made 6, and then, just you could tell he was extremely deflated after that. Missed the green badly on 16. 17 hit in the water off the tee again. Just was totally deflated. Not his day. He'll bounce back. I think he'll still have a big year, but a disappointing weekend for him for sure.
John Rahm also had his bogey issues on Sunday. He started the day one back, 3 bogeys in 5 holes, 12 through 16, and some of that old John Rahm temper flaring up as well, a little bit of club abuse on the 13th hole, at least, and some other things as well.
Yeah, typical John Rahm. He definitely wears his emotions on his sleeve.
Yeah.
We've known that for a while now. I tried to hit a flop shot after hitting it over the green on hole 13 and hit it long and immediately just spazzed at his club, slammed it into the ground, and he said, though, he has these emotions that bottle up inside himself and needs to get them out. Otherwise, it ends up getting worse. And that is, for some people true. And for John, it certainly seems to be the case. Didn't help with him, though. He ended up still shooting one over for the day and finished T11th with Ricky, actually. But the amazing thing about it is he still continues this incredible run.
Mm-hmm.
He blew up on the weekend 2 weeks ago at Torrey, but he's still, he won the week before that at the Career Builder, and then also had that second place finish in Hawaii to start the year. So he's still on a great run. He's number 2 in the world, and we'll be seeing a lot more of him actually this week, teeing it up at Pebble.
We mentioned bonus golf on Sunday. You got some bonus basketball on Saturday, which hampered CBS's coverage. And basically, there was an entire hour in between when Golf Channel went off with their coverage, and they were supposed to go right into the CBS coverage. But because Missouri and Kentucky went over, there was a lot of time without some quality golf on Saturday.
Yeah, it's just flat out ridiculous. Let's call it what it is. CBS and Golf Channel, for whatever reason, have always needed previously 30 minutes in between coverage, where right in the middle of the front nine on Saturday and Sunday, Golf Channel goes off the air, and then CBS eats some ham sandwiches or something for lunch, and then decides to come on the air a half hour later. Okay, I'm joking. I know there's things that have to go on there,
sure.
But they did reduce that to 15 minutes this year, which you think would be a positive. Well, it doesn't really matter when CBS they schedule these college basketball games that start. So they're supposed to start at noon Central Time.
Yeah.
They end up usually starting about 12:08.
Mm-hmm.
A nationally televised college basketball game in the history of the world, I don't think has ever gone less than 2 hours. So by starting at 12:08, and then you have a competitive game in some cases, or even if not, you just have more TV timeouts and all that stuff that goes with it. It never gets over at 2 o'clock. And even if it does get over shortly after 2, you always have these commercials and then the CBS sports desk, and then golf doesn't come on until at least 10 or 15 after. Well, on Saturday, like you said, we had the Kentucky-Missouri game. Didn't even go into overtime. That's the worst part. Did not even go into overtime.
Boy, what if it had?
It would have. The entire day would have been canceled. But yeah, golf comes on at 2:50.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. And at that point, which was one of the best days, actually 3:50, excuse me, because the game came on at 1.
Yeah.
One of the best days on tour because you have the Phoenix Open, the crazy Saturday crowd, record-setting crowd. They come on the air. There's a whopping 6 groups still to go through 16. 6. So, basically half of it was already done. It was extremely deflating, but that's CBS for you, and I'm sure the same thing will happen again this weekend.
Sure, and this weekend will be Pebble Beach, and a lot of storylines. Let's start with Rory McIlroy. This will be the first time he's played in this tournament ever in his career. Now, he's played the course once before at the 2010 U.S. Open and missed the cut 8 years ago. So what do we expect from Rory at Pebble Beach?
Specifically this week, I'm not sure we'll see the best Rory has to offer, although for this year I definitely like his chances. But this week, I'm a little worried about the greens. If he played Pebble, like you mentioned, a long time ago. It's a lot different course in the summer in June than it is in February.
Mm-hmm.
The POA is really grainy and bumpy. It's really slow compared to tour standards, and it takes a lot of getting used to. And that's actually why Tiger, who used to play this tournament and won it before, stopped playing it years ago, because the greens they're not tour quality, and that's just kind of is what it is because in Northern California in February, they're bumpy and grainy, and it drives a lot of guys crazy. And you also have the Pro-Am format, and you have Pebble Beach. The average round is 6 hours. That's insane. And it drives certain guys crazy. And I don't think, even though Rory is playing with his dad, which will help, I'm not sure it's going to mix with Rory. But he is in good form. He did finish second on the Euro Tour just a couple weeks ago at the Dubai Desert Classic, and then he was T3rd the week before. So he's hitting it well, but not so sure I like his chances this week.
Well, and if you want to see some of the best players in the world, you mentioned Rory's playing. You mentioned John Rahm's going to be there, Dustin Johnson, Jordan Spieth, Jason Day. I mean, it's going to have about as good a field as you're going to see this early in the season.
Yeah, really good field. Those names you mentioned, you have Phil, you have last week's winner Gary Woodland, Matt Kuchar, Adam Scott making his season debut. So it's really a good field for Pebble. And then next week's Riviera, which is going to have a stacked field as well. So really a great time to be a golf fan. The PGA Tour West Coast swing is fun, and then before you know it, it'll shift to Florida and then on to the Masters. So it's going to be a great spring.